Welcome back. This is week 2. And before we begin, I want to do something we will do at the start of every single week. I want to put last week's idea back in your hands, because this week stands directly on top of it and will not hold without it. Last week we arrived at one sentence, and I hope it is still with you. A mind is not for seeing the world. A mind is for predicting what is about to happen, so the body it lives in can keep existing. We watched the prediction loop run in a thermostat, in a bird catching a moth, in you crossing a street, in your own body holding itself together from the inside, and right at the end of the hour, I handed your word and asked you to carry it. I called it the blindfold. Your mind builds a model of the world, ceaselessly, out of thin signals, and then it forgets that it built anything at all. The construction hides itself. You do not experience your visual system's best reconstruction of a room. You simply experience a room. The mine, I said, is a map that forgets it is a map. Today we lift one corner of that blindfold, and here is the honest promise of this hour. Said plainly so you can hold me to it by the end of today. The most ordinary thing in your life, the simple fact of looking around and seeing what is there, is going to look completely different to you, not because the world will have changed, because you will finally see what your mind has been doing. Silently, every waking second, to hand you that world. The same 2 ground rules from last week hold, and they hold all term, so let me say them once more. The first is about pace. If I go too fast, that is not your failing, it is information, and I need it now, not later. So if you were taking this lesson and a part of it slides past you before it landed, stop, go back 30 seconds, listen again. Nobody is timing you. The second rule is about not knowing. I don't know is still a complete sentence in this course, and it is still the actual sound of a mind in the act of learning. Today, in particular, we are going to walk straight up to the edge of something genuinely strange, and if it makes you uneasy for a moment, that is not a problem to fix. That uneases you doing the work. Here is the shape of our hour, so that you always know where we are and how much is left. The same 7 moves as last week, because the rhythm is going to be the same every single week. But steadiness is deliberate. It means you never have to spend attention working out the format, and can spend all of it on the idea. We open in a moment with an activity, and in this one you do the work, not me. Then 3 demonstrations, where I do most of the talking and you do the watching the coffee cup, a set of small experiments with your own senses, and a thawing apple, then a thought experiment, which is the strangest and, I think, the most beautiful part of today. Then the single definition this week turns on. Then we clear away 3 confusions before they can take root, and we close, the way we always close, with you putting the day's idea into your own words. And the same note as last week about notes, you do not need to take any. This hour is built out of stories and pictures, because stories and pictures are what a mind keeps without effort. If your attention is here, and only here, you are doing this exactly right. So here is the one idea of week 2. As always, I will frame it honestly. Everything we do for the rest of this hour is unpacking this single sentence. If you took only the next 30 seconds, you would still have the seed of the whole week. Here it is. You never touch the world. Everything you experience is a construction your mind builds from thin and ambiguous signals. Perception is not reception. It is inference. Now, I know how that sounds. It sounds like a riddle, or like something a philosopher says to be difficult, so let me make it concrete immediately, because this is not philosophy and it is not a word game. It is, as far as we can tell, simply how a mind works. Think about what is actually happening right now. As you look at whatever is in front of you, it feels, and notice the word feels. It feels as though the room is simply present to you, as though your eyes are open windows, and the room walks straight in through them. exactly as it is, and arrives in your mind finished, the world on one side, you on the other, and nothing in between but clear glass. That picture is the most natural picture in the world. Every one of us carries it, and it is wrong, not slightly wrong. Not wrong at the edges, but wrong at the centre, because there is no window, there is no glass. What actually reaches you from that room is not the room. It is a thin trickle of signals, a scatter of light landing on the back of your eye, a few vibrations of air arriving at your ear, and those signals are not the world, any more than a knock on a door is the person outside it. Your mind takes that thin trickle, and from it builds a room, it constructs one, and it does the building so fast, and so silently, and so well, that you never catch it in the act. You only ever see the finished room, and you call that seeing. Here is the word I want you to hold for the whole hour. The word is inference. To infer something is to reach a conclusion you could not see directly, by reasoning from the evidence you do have. A doctor infers an illness from a handful of symptoms. A detective infers what happened from the marks left behind. Neither one watched the thing itself. Both reconstructed it from traces, and that, exactly that, is what your mind is doing, every waking moment, with the thin signals from your senses. It is not receiving the world, it is inferring it. Perception is inference. Hold that sentence. We were going to earn every word of it together, starting now, and starting, as always, with you. We are going to begin properly with an activity, and this one is genuinely yours. I'm going to be quiet for most of it while you work. Here is what I would like you to do. Wherever you are right now, take a slow look around you and name, out loud, or in your head, it does not matter, 5 things you can see, just 5. Do not rush it. A cup, a window, a door, a patch of light on the floor, your own hand. 5 ordinary things. Take your time, look properly, and name your 5. Good. Now keep those 5 things in mind, because I'm going to ask you a much harder question about them, and I want you to sit with it honestly rather than answer quickly. Pick just one of your 5, the cup, say, or the door. You named it in an instant. It felt like the simplest thing in the world. You looked, and it was there, and you named it. So here is the question. Of everything you just experienced when you saw that cup, its roundness, its weight even though you did not touch it, the fact that it is a cup and not a picture of a cup, the sense that it is solid, that it continues round the back where you cannot see, that it would still be there if you closed your eyes, of all of that, how much actually arrived from your eyes, and how much did your mind supply? Let me make the question sharper, because I think you will be surprised by the answer. Your eyes, the actual light-sensing surface at the back of them, did something very small and very specific. They registered a pattern of light or some brightness here, some darkness there, a few edges, some colour. That is all the eye does. The eye does not know it is a cup. The eye does not know the cup is solid, or that it has a back, or that it would survive your blink, or that you could pick it up and it would be heavier than a leaf and lighter than a stone. Not one particle of that came down the optic nerve. The light carried none of it, and yet you experienced all of it, instantly, effortlessly, as a single seamless fact called a cup. So where did the rest come from? It came from you. It came from your mind, which has met 10,000 cups, and which took the thin pattern of light and recognized it, and then poured back into the experience everything light could never carry: the solidity, the weight, the hidden back, the permanence. You did not see the cup. You saw a pattern of light, and your mind inferred a cup, and handed you the cup as though it had simply been there. I want you to notice the proportion here, because it is the whole lesson in one stroke. The part that came from the world, the raw light, is thin. It is genuinely meeker. The part that came from you, the recognition, the solidity, the meaning, the whole standing object, is enormous. You are not mostly receiving, you are mostly building, and the building is so fast and so silent that, your whole life, you have given all the credit to your eyes. That startle you may be feeling, that small weight really, hold on to it. It is not a trick of mine, and it is not an edge case. It is the ordinary truth of every moment you have ever perceived. We have only just pressed on it, and already the simple act of seeing a cup has split open into two very different things, a trickle of signal, and a great act of construction. Now I am going to slow that cup all the way down and show you the construction happening piece by piece. I am going to walk you through 3 demonstrations. Watch for one thing across all 3, and only that thing in every case. The signal that reaches you is thinner and more ambiguous than the world you end up experiencing, and your mind closes that gap by inferring. The cup will show you the construction happening. The second demonstration will show you that the signal genuinely does not contain enough, that the mind has to infer, because the alternative is nothing, and the apple will show you that even the things you feel most certain you can see, like one thing causing another, are inferred too. Watch the gap between signal and world. The gap is the lesson. The first demonstration, a coffee cup on a table. Let us follow it, in slow motion, all the way from the world to your experience, every single step. Step 1. Out in the world. There is something on the table. We will come back, at the very end of the hour, to what that something actually is. For now, just hold that there is a happening out there, going on entirely on its own, whether anyone looks at it or not. Light from the room, from a window, from a lamp, falls on that something and scatters off it in all directions. Notice already the light is not the cup. The light is just light. It has bounced off the cup and picked up, in the bouncing, a few facts about it, roughly which way the surface faced, roughly how much it soaked up and how much it threw back. The light is a messenger, and like every messenger it carries only a thin report, not the thing itself. Step 2. A narrow cone of that scattered light happens to travel toward you, and some of it passes through the lens of your eye and lands on the retina, a sheet of light-sensitive cells at the back. And here is the first thing worth stopping on. What lands there is flat. It is a 2-dimensional smear of light and colour on a curved inner surface, like an image on the back of a spoon. There is no depth in it. There is no object in it. There is no cup in it. There is a patch of light. Step 3. Those light-sensitive cells do something almost unbelievable. When you say it plainly, they turn light into electricity. A cell catches a particle of light and answers with a tiny electrical pulse. So now the thin report carried by the light has been changed again into a stream of nerve impulses, little electrical clicks racing along the optic nerve toward the brain. And I want you to sit with what that stream actually is, because it is the heart of this whole lesson. It is not bright, it is not coloured, it is not warm. It is a train of identical electrical pulses travelling down a nerve, the very same kind of pulse, whether it started as red light or blue light, as a sound or a smell or a touch. The signal that your brain actually receives from the world has no colour in it, no shape in it, no cup in it. It is, quite literally, a pattern of clicks in the dark. Now hold that, because here is the turn. You are not, right now, experiencing a pattern of clicks in the dark. You are experiencing a cup, a particular colour, a particular curve, a sense of solid china, steam lifting off it, the fact that it is graspable, that it has a handle round the side you cannot see, that it is the kind of thing that holds liquid and would be warm to the touch. All of that is in your experience. None of it was in the signal. The signal was clicks. So the cup you are experiencing did not travel to you. It was built. Your mind took that pattern of clicks, and against everything it has ever learned about light and surfaces and objects and cups, it inferred the most likely cause of exactly this pattern of clicks, and the most likely cause was in a cup here, in this light, at this angle, and then it constructed the full experience of that cup and presented it to you, instantly, finished, with the construction completely hidden. What you call seeing the cup is the last step of a long act of building. You are seeing the conclusion of an inference. And now I want to give you the two words that this whole course, and the natural reality framework woven through it, will use for the two things we have just prized apart, because they are not the same thing, and almost every confusion about the mind comes from treating them as one. The cup out there, the happening on the table, the one going on by itself whether or not anyone looks, the one made of whatever it is actually made of, we will call that happening. Happening is what is actually going on its own terms, independent of any, and the cup you experience, the warm, round, solid, handled, finished cup that your mind built and handed to you, we will call that meaning. Meaning is what your mind constructs. It is everything you ever actually experience. Here is the sentence I want you to carry out of this demonstration if you live entirely inside meaning, and you never once touch happening directly. The cup you experience is meaning. The cup on the table is happening. They are related. A happening is genuinely why the meaning arose, but they are not the same thing, and you only ever have the one. Hold those two words. We are about to test how solid the gap between them really is. The second demonstration, and this one is a set of small experiments you can do on your own senses, right now, because I do not want you to take my word for any of this. I want you to catch your own mind doing it. Here is the question this demonstration answers. I have said the signal is thin, but you might reasonably think thin, fine. But surely it is enough. Surely the light that reaches my eye, even if it is just a pattern, pins down the world exactly, one pattern, one world. So let me show you plainly that it does not. The signal does not pin down the world. The very same signal is consistent with many different worlds, and when that is true, the mind has no choice, it must infer which world to show you. There is a name for this, and it is one of the core ideas of the week, so let me give it to you now and then earn it. We call it the inverse problema. The signal underdetermines the world. Underdetermines simply means it does not fix, does not pin down, leaves open. The signal arrives, and it is consistent with more than one cause. So the signal alone can never tell you which cause is real. Something has to choose. That something is inference. Let me earn that with 3 small experiments. First, the blind spot, which we touched last week. But now I want you to actually find yours. In each of your eyes there is a real, physical hole in your vision, a patch of the retina, where the optic nerve leaves the eye, that has no light-sensing cells at all. So in the signal coming from each eye, there is a genuine gap, an absence, a place the world sends no report from at all. Now do you experience a hole in the world, a black blot floating in front of you, the size of several full moons? You do not. You never have. Your mind takes the gap in the signal and fills it in. It predicts straight across the hole, painting in whatever it is confident should be there more wall, more sky, more carpet. And here is the point for today. The signal there says nothing, and out of nothing, your mind builds something, and hands it to you as plain seeing. If the signal fully determined your experience, a gap in the signal would be the gap in your world. It is not. The mind infers across it. Second experiment, an ambiguous figure. You have almost certainly seen one of these, a simple line drawing that flips. The classic is a drawing that is, at one moment, plainly the head of a duck, beak to the left, and then, with no change at all in the ink on the page, is just as plainly a rabbit, the beak become 2 ears. Now think hard about what is happening there, because it is extraordinary. The signal, the pattern of light coming off that page into your eye, is not changing. The ink is not moving, Every photon is doing exactly what it did a second ago, and yet your experience flips completely between two whole animals, one signal, two worlds. The signal cannot be chosen. The signal is constant. Your mind is choosing. It is landing on one interpretation, then the other, because the signal genuinely supports both and pins down neither. That flip you can feel happening is the inverse problem made visible. It is the sensation of your own mind inferring. Third, and this one needs nothing drawn at all, only words. Imagine you receive a short message from someone, and it reads, in full fine talk later, 4 small words. Now, read them as though they came from a close friend who was busy and warm and simply on their way out the door. Easy, light, affectionate. Now read the exact same 4 words as though they came from someone who is hurt and has gone cold on you. Clipped, withdrawn, a door closing, same 4 words. Not one letter different, and yet 2 entirely different worlds, 2 different states of another human being's heart, and the words themselves, the signal itself, do not tell you which. They cannot, they underdetermine, and so your mind infers, and it infers using everything else it knows your history with that person, your mood, what happened yesterday. The meaning you land on feels like it is in the message. It is not. It is in the inference you laid over the message. 3 experiments, a gap in the eye, a drawing that will not hold still, 4 words read warm or cold. Every one of them is the same finding the signal does not contain the world. It is consistent with several worlds, so the mind must infer which one to live in. That is the inverse problem, and it is not an occasional puzzle. It is the permanent condition of having senses. The signal is always thinner than the world, so perception is always, necessarily, inference. The third demonstration, and here I want to go after the thing you feel most sure you can simply see, because if even this turns out to be inference, the case is closed. Picture an apple on a branch. The stem gives way, and the apple falls to the ground. Now you feel, with total confidence, that you could see that, not just the apple, and not just the ground, but the falling, the event itself, the apple being pulled down, and more than that you feel you could see the cause. You could see that the apple fell because it came loose, that one thing made the other happen. Seeing causes feels as direct and obvious as seeing colours, but walk it through with me slowly. What actually arrived at your eye? A round reddish patch of light, and that patch was in a slightly higher place, and then a slightly lower place, and then lower again, a sequence of still positions, moment after moment. That is the entire signal. A reddish patch here, then here, then here. The signal does not contain falling. The signal does not contain because. The signal does not contain the stem gave way and therefore the apple dropped. The signal is a series of locations. Full stop. The falling, the smooth, continuous, single motion, is something your mind built by stitching those still positions together and inferring a movement that runs through them, and the cause, the sense that the apple dropped because it came loose, that the looseness made the falling happen, that is an inference your mind layered on top, out of everything it has ever learned about stems and weight and things coming free. You have never, in your life, seen a cause. You cannot. A cause is not a colour, or a shape. It is not the kind of thing light can carry. What light can carry isn't a patch here, then a patch there. Because is something the mind supplies. Causation is inferred. Always. Every time. This is worth sitting with. Because it is genuinely the deepest point of the day. We feel we are watching the world's machinery directly. This caused that. This pushed that. This made that happen. We are not. We are watching a sequence of thin signals, and inferring the machinery underneath. The way you infer the wind from a moving branch. You do not see the wind, you see the branch. and you infer the wind, and the inference is so fast and so reliable that it feels like sight. Causation is your model's best account of why the signals keep arriving in the order they do. It is a magnificent inference, but it is an inference, so look at what these 3 demonstrations have done. Together, the coffee cup showed you that even a plain, still, solid object is built from a thin signal. The blind spot and the duck rabbit and the 4 cold words showed you that the signal genuinely does not pin the world down, that the mind must choose, and the apple has now shown you that even the deep structure of the world, motion, cause, one thing making another happen, is inferred and never simply seen. Put those together and there is nowhere left for the camera model to stand. There is no part of your experience that is just the world walking in through a window. All of it, the still cup, the falling apple, the cause, the colour, the solidity, all of it is constructed. Now I want to take you somewhere stranger still. Before the strange part, let me draw you a picture, the picture this whole week is built around, and give its pieces their proper names, because we are going to use these names for the rest of the course. Picture a single line drawn straight through all of existence. Everything that sits on one side of that line or the other. On the far side, the outside, is happening. We met the word with a coffee cup. Happening is everything that is actually going on its own terms, independent of any mind processes, interactions, things affecting other things, the apple coming loose, the air moving, the light scattering. Appling does not wait for you. It does not need you. It carries on identically whether or not anyone is there to experience it. In the natural reality framework, this side of the line has a colour name, and I want you to start using it, because it is vivid and it sticks. We call the outside blue space. Blue space is the domain of pure happening. Causation, running on its own, on the near side. The inside is meaning. Meaning is everything your mind built, every image, every sound, every thought, every feeling, the whole constructed world you actually live in, the experienced cup, the scene falling, the warmth you read into 4 words. All of that is meaning and all of it is built from within, by you, in the framework. This side has its own colour name. We call the inside red space. Red space is your constructed world, your private, complete, lived-in reality. And here is something to hold tightly. You have never once been outside your red space. Everything you have ever experienced, including this lesson, including your own body as you feel it right now, is red space. It is the only place you have ever been. Between the two, between blue space and red space, there is a boundary, and the boundary is not a wall. It is not a barrier that keeps the two apart. The boundary is the meeting place, the surface where the happening outside touches you and triggers the building inside. Your senses are the boundary, light striking the retina, air moving the eardrum. That is blue space arriving at the boundary. And what crosses that boundary is never the world itself. What crosses is only signal, thin, partial. Those clicks in the dark. The boundary is where the world knocks, and inference of what you do with the knock. Now, one careful thing, and it matters. Blue space and red space are not 2 places far apart, like 2 countries, and red space is not a worse, blurrier copy of blue space. It is not the same kind of thing at all. The framework puts it this way, and I find the image exact. The 2 are like perpendicular lines, like 2 axes set at right angles. They meet. They are in constant contact at the boundary. They influence each other without pause, but they never become each other. Happening never turns into meaning. Meaning never turns into happening. One is the world running, the other is a mind building. They touch at right angles and run on, each in its own dimension. Hold that picture. Outside, boundary. Inside, blue. The meeting. red, because the thought experiment we are about to do lives entirely inside it. I would like to do a thought experiment with you, and as last week, you can close your eyes for it. It works better that way. Settle for a second. Picture an ordinary scene. A small kitchen. Early evening. 2 people in it. A parent and their grown child, and the child has just come home, and as they come through the door, a glass that was near the edge of the counter goes over and breaks on the floor. That is the event. Now I want you to hold something very precisely, out in blue space, out in happening. What occurred is exact and singular and has no opinion. A glass object lost its balance and met the floor with enough force to fracture. Sound waves spread out, fragments scattered. That is the entire event, on its own terms. It is not an accident. It is not carelessness. It is not a sign the evening is going to go badly. Blue space does not contain any of those things. Blue space contains a glass, a floor, a force, some fragments, one event. But there are 2 minds in that kitchen, and each of them is going to do exactly what we have spent this hour describing. Each is going to take the thin signal of that event and build a red space well from it. So let us watch them build. The first mind, the parent, the signal arrives, a sharp sound, the sight of the glass going, fragments on the tile, and this mind infers, instantly, below any choosing, a whole world, and the world it builds is something like they have come home tense. Something is wrong. This is how the bad evenings always start. I need to step carefully. That is a complete red space. It has a past in it, and a forecast, and a feeling. It is vivid and immediate, and it feels, to the parent, simply true. It does not feel built, it feels seen. The blindfold is doing its work. The construction has hidden itself, and the parent does not experience an interpretation of a broken glass. They experience a bad evening beginning. Now the second mind, the child, same event, the exact same blue space happening, same sound waves, same fragments, the identical signal, near enough, and this mind builds a completely different red space. It infers something like the counter is cluttered, that glass was right on the edge. It was going to go sooner or later. I will sweep it up. That is also a complete world. It also has a past, and a forecast, and a feeling. And it also feels, to the child, simply true, not built, seen. Now here is the question I want to put to you, and it is the sharp one. Which of those 2 people is seeing it wrong? Sit with that honestly before you answer, because the pull is to say one of them must be, that one has read the situation correctly and the other has distorted it. But look again at what we have actually established this hour. Neither of them received the event. Neither of them touched blue space. Both of them got the same thin signal, a sound, a sight, some fragments, and both did the only thing a mind can do with a thin signal. They inferred the most likely world behind it, each using everything they had, their history, their fears, their mood, their 10,000 previous evenings. Both inferences are doing their job correctly. Both red spaces are complete and coherent, and genuinely theirs. There is no third position, no view from nowhere, from which one of them could be checked against the real meaning of the broken glass, because blue space has no meaning in it to check against. Blue space had a glass and a floor. The meaning, all of it, was built on the inside by each of them. I'm planting this lightly today, and we will give it a whole hour of it so much later in the course, but I want you to feel the shape of it now. The world is full of these moments where 2 people stand in the identical blue space event and live in 2 different red space worlds, each one complete, each one feeling like plain fact. We have a name for the friction. When those worlds grind against each other, we call it conflict or dissonance, and the usual instinct, when it happens, is to decide the other person is getting it wrong, distorting, exaggerating, being unreasonable, but what you have just seen tells you something gentler and far more useful. The other person is not seeing your world badly. They are seeing their world accurately. They built it from a thin signal, with inference, exactly as you built yours. And so the most powerful question you can ask, and I want you to carry this one out of today, is not why are they getting it wrong? It is what world would make this make sense? What red space are they actually standing in? That single question is one of the most useful things this entire course will give you, and it falls straight out of one broken glass. So that is the thought experiment, and here is what it leaves in your hands. One event in blue space, 2 minds at the boundary, 2 complete, valid, lived-in red space worlds, not one real perception and one mistaken one, 2 constructions, each doing exactly what perception does. Now let me pull this whole hour into a single definition. We have the whole idea in our hands now, the thin signal, the construction, blue space and red space, the boundary between them, the inverse problem, the 2 minds and the 1 glass. Let me gather all of it into the single definition this week turns on. As last week, there is no mathematics in this. It is a sentence, a picture, and the names we have already earned start with what we have proven, step by step, over the last 40 minutes. The world out there, blue space, happening, never reaches you. It cannot. What reaches you is signal thin, partial, full of gaps, and consistent with more than one world. That is the inverse problem, and it is not a flaw in your senses you might one day fix. It is the permanent, unavoidable shape of having senses at all. The signal will always be thinner than the world, so your mind is faced every waking moment with a genuine problem to solve, and I want to name it as a problem, because naming it that way is what makes the solution visible. The problem is this: here is a thin signal. What world most likely produced it? The mind cannot look up the answer. There is no window onto blue space to check against. It can only do what a detective does with the evidence, what a doctor does with the symptoms. It reasons from the trace to the most likely cause. It infers, and then it builds the experience of that inferred whirl, your red space, and hands it you, finished, with the building hidden. That is perception, not the receiving of a world, the inferring of one. Here is the definition. In a single line, perception is inference. The mind builds its best red space world by inferring, across the boundary, the most likely blue space cause of the thin signals it receives. Let me walk you through that on the picture, slowly, because every word of it is load-bearing. On the outside, blue space, happening, runs on its own. As signal leaves it and arrives at the boundary, a light at the retina, air at the eardrum, that signal is all you get. It is thin, and it underdetermines. Many worlds could have sent it. Now the mind does its work. It runs induction. And let me give you that word properly, because it is one of the named ideas of the week. Induction is reasoning from particular evidence to a general best account of it, from the clues to the most likely story. It is exactly what you do when a friend is late and unreachable and you assemble, from those scraps, the likeliest explanation. Induction is the engine of inference. It is the actual move the mind makes at the boundary. It takes the thin signal and induces, reasons its way to, the most likely world behind it, and from that it constructs your red space at the lived, complete, experienced world. That constructed world is what you wake up inside every morning and call, simply, reality. And now I can give you the last piece of vocabulary, and it ties the whole course together. That constructed red space, the model of the world your mind builds and runs and lives inside, has a technical name in active inference. The framework at the spine of this course, It is called the generative model. Let me unpack the name. Because the name is the idea. It is a model because it is not the world. It is your mind's working version of the world. Its best internal account of what is out there and how it behaves. And it is generative because of what it does. It does not sit there passively. It actively generates. It produces your expectations, your perceptions, the whole experienced world. Here is the join I most want you to see. The one that links week 1 to week 2 and holds for the rest of the course. Your generative model and your red space are the same thing. Named from 2 sides. Active inference calls it the generative model. Natural reality calls it red space. Both are pointing at the one thing. The world your mind builds and hands you in place of the world you cannot touch. Last week's blindfold is simply this model run so well, and so silently, that you mistake it for the world itself. So look at the full shape on the picture. Blue space sends a thin signal to the boundary. At the boundary, the mind runs induction. Out of induction, it builds the generative model, your red space. And you live, every second of your life, inside that built model, mistaking it. Because the blindfold is good for the world. That is perception. That is the whole definition. Standing up. Let me gather the names, because you have genuinely earned all of them this hour, and I want them stacked in one place before we go on. Happening. What is actually going on in the world. On its own terms, with no mind involved. Meaning, what your mind builds, everything you ever experience, they are not the same, and you only ever have meaning. Blue space, the outside, the domain of pure happening, of causation running on its own. Red space, the inside, your constructed, lived-in world, the boundary, the meeting place between them, where blue space arrives as thin signal and the building begins. Your senses are that boundary, the inverse problem, the permanent fact that the signal underdetermines the world. One signal is consistent with many worlds, so the mind must infer which to live in. Induction. The mind's move at the boundary, reasoning from the thin signal to the most likely world behind it. The generative model. The world your mind builds by induction. The active inference name for your red space. And the one sentence that holds all of them a perception is inference. You do not receive the world. You infer it, build it, and live inside the build. I want to be honest, as I was last week, about what comes next, so you hear it as a promise and not a threat. Nothing we have built today gets torn down. It only deepens. And here is the exact crack we walk through next week. Your mind builds this red space world by inference, but the inference is never perfect, and the construction and the world it is modeling will always, a little, disagree. There is always a gap between the world your mind has built and the world the next signal reports. Next week is about that gap, why it is not a fault but the single most useful signal a mind has, and the 2 moves, and only 2, that a mind can ever make to close it. But that is next week. Today hold the build. 3 confusions to clear, before they have a chance to set, and the first one is the big one. It is the place almost everyone's mind goes after an hour like this, and if we leave it standing it will quietly poison everything. The confusion is this: if I never touch the world, if everything I experience is just something my mind built, then nothing is real. It is all in my head. It is all relative. Nothing is true. No. And I want to be very firm and very clear here, because this matters. That is not what we have said. And it is close to the opposite of what we have said. Go back to the very first word of the day happening, blue space. We have insisted, all hour, that there is a world, a real one, out there, running on its own terms, completely independent of you. The glass really did fall. The apple really did come loose. Blue space is utterly, robustly real. We have not dissolved the world. We have said one specific thing about your relationship to that real world. You do not touch it directly. You reach it through inference. Those are completely different claims. There is no world. That is not our claim, and it is false. There is a real world, and you know it only by building a model of it. That is our claim, and it is the opposite of nothing is real, and its all relative is wrong in the same way. Yes, two minds can build two different red spaces from one event. We saw exactly that with the broken glass, but that does not make all constructions equally good. A model can be tested. It makes predictions. The world pushes back. A model that keeps getting the next moment wrong is a worse model, and your mind will feel the cost of it and work to repair it. That is the entire engine of next week. So this is not anything goes. It is something far more demanding. There is a real world. You never see it directly. And so your whole life is the disciplined work of building the best model of it you can, and being answerable, every moment, to whether the model holds. That is not relativism. That is the opposite of complacency. The second confusion, and this one is the camera model making its last stand. So let us put it down properly. It goes a come on. I open my eyes and the whole room is just there instantly, completely, in full colour and detail. It does not feel built. It feels delivered. Surely my eyes simply give me the world. I'll understand the pull of that completely. It is exactly how it feels, but notice that it does not feel built is not evidence that it was not built. Of course it does not feel built. That is the blindfold. That is the entire point of last week. A construction good enough to live by is precisely one that hides its own seams. The feeling of effortless delivery is not proof the eyes did the work. It is proof the building was excellent, and then bring back the hard evidence from this very hour, because we did not just assert this, we showed it. Your eyes have a literal hole in them, the blind spot, and you do not see the hole, so your eyes plainly did not give you that patch of world. Your mind inferred it. The duck and the rabbit flip while the light into your eye does not change at all. So the eyes cannot be delivering the animal. The mind is choosing it. The signal travelling up the optic nerve has no colour and no shape in it. It is clicks in the dark. So the colour and the shape you experience were not in what the eyes sent. They were built. The eyes are real and they matter enormously. They are the boundary. They gather the signal, but they hand your brain a thin, flat, colourless, gap-ridden stream of clicks. Everything you would actually call seeing. The depth, the colour, the solid standing objects, is the inference your mind performs on that stream. The eyes open the door. They are not what walks through it. The third confusion, and it is the most important one to catch, because it is the quietest, it goes a fine, the blind spot, the duck-rabbit, optical illusions. I accept those. Those are clever edge cases. Special tricks, glitches at the margins, but normal perception, ordinary seeing, the rest of the time. That is just accurate. The illusions are the exception. No, and please hear this clearly, because it is the load-bearing point of the whole week. The illusions are not the exception. The illusions are just the rule caught in the act. An optical illusion is not perception breaking. It is perception working. Exactly as it always works, but arranged so cleverly that the construction becomes briefly visible to you. The duck-rabbit does not reveal a rare flaw. It reveals the ordinary machinery. Inference is not something your mind switches on for trick pictures and off for cups and tables. It is running at full power on the cup, on the table, on the face of the person you love, on every word of this sentence, on your own hand. There is no moment of raw, direct, unbuilt seeing that the illusions are interrupting. All of perception is constructed, always. The illusion is simply the one time the blindfold slips far enough for you to notice. And that is exactly why illusions are precious to us. They are not curiosities, they are the only place the ordinary, ceaseless, invisible work of the mind briefly shows its hand. Here is how we end, the same way we will end every single week, the retrieval close. And I will say again what I said last week, because it is just as true today. This is the most valuable 90 seconds of the whole hour, not the demonstrations. This, I am going to ask you to finish one sentence, out loud, in your own words, not my words. Not the words on any slide, yours. If your wording comes out different from the way I would say it, that is not a problem. That is the entire point. The sentence is a perception, is. If you were taking this lesson on your own, do it anyway, out loud. In the room you are in, finish the sentence perception is. You might land on inference, on construction, on my mind's best guess at what is out there, on the world I build from a thin signal, not the world I receive. Every one of those is correct. The wording belongs to you. The idea underneath every version is the single idea of this week, and the fact that you can say it out loud, with no notes, in a sentence you built yourself, is precisely how you know today landed, not because you heard it from me, because you can say it back as yours. One thing to carry into the week, and like last week it is small, genuinely a few minutes of noticing. Here it is. Once, between now and next week, I want you to catch your own mind in the act of inferring, catch it building a red space. The easiest place to catch it is a moment of misreading you see. For a half-second, something that is not there. You take a coat on a door for a person standing in the room. You hear your name in a noise that was only the wind. You read a tone into a message the sender never put there, and only later find out, in that half-second of being wrong, the construction shows itself, because for once you can see the seam between what your mind built and what was actually there. When you catch one, write it down, one sentence. What did my mind build? And what was the thin signal it built it from? That is the whole assignment. Bring that sentence to week 3. It is, quite literally, where next week begins. 2 last things, and then I will let you go. First, there is a short recap video, 2 or 3 minutes, waiting on your week 2 page in the portal. Everything we did this hour, condensed. Watch it once this week, with the sound on, not to learn it again. You have already learned it, but to let it settle, the way a second look at a map settles a route you have already walked. And second, the look ahead, so you leave with the next question already alive in you. Recall last week a mind is for predicting, and recall today your mind does that predicting by building, by inferring a whole red space world from thin signals it can never fully trust. Put those 2 weeks together and a question falls straight out, and it is the question of week 3. Your mind builds a model, but the world the model is of keeps running, on its own, in blue space, and the model and the world will never perfectly agree. There is always a gap between what your mind has built and what the next signal reports. So what is that gap? Is it a failure? A sign the model is broken? Or is it something else entirely? Something useful? Something a mind cannot live without? And when the gap opens, what can a mind actually do about it? It turns out there are exactly 2 moves. Only ever 2. And week 3 is both of them. Walked all the way around the loop. That is week 2. 1 sentence. And it belongs to you now. Perception is not reception. It is inference. You never touch the world. You build it, beautifully, from almost nothing, every waking second. Thank you, genuinely. I will see you next week.